Hello students and welcome back to the classroom. Tim here again from Lessons on the Web, your teacher, and today we are talking about an introduction into rhythm and how it works. The very first topic we're going to talk about today are beats. How do I define a beat? Well, a beat, I would say, is a regular interval of rhythm or a regular interval of any kind of sound. So if you hear a song, like jingle bells, so I know I'm not the best singer, but when I clap along to it, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Those are what we call the beats of the song. They're in regular intervals, right? So it's not like, which would be irregular. They're very steady, right? So those are the beats to the song. So those are very important in understanding the rest of it. But let me draw out some beats for you and show you what they look like. So here we have 4 regular beats, right? 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's it. That's all a beat is. Okay, now we're going to talk about tempo. Tempo is how fast you count the beats, right? So you can actually have 4 beats and count them slow, right? 1, 2, 3, 4. They were still at regular intervals, so they're still beats, but they're just counted slower. So that's what people mean when they say tempo. So what is the tempo they usually say of the song or things like that? So a tempo just tells you how fast you play. A fast tempo, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, is counted and played very quickly. A slow tempo, 1, 2, 3, 4, is played slow. And tempo is usually expressed as a number. It'll say like quarter note equals 120 in the beginning of the song, or they'll use it as like an Italian word. So if it says adagio, that means you're going to be playing with a slow tempo. 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's all there is to tempo. Let's move on to the next topic. Now we're going to talk about note durations. A note duration, very simply, is how long you're going to be playing the note for. So here I have 4 quarter notes written out. So things like quarter notes, half notes, whole notes, dotted half notes, eighth notes, these are all what we call note durations, and they tell you how long to play the notes. So let me give you a few examples of these. So here I have 2 half notes written out. How many beats does a half note get? Well, it gets 2 beats, right? Assuming that you know all of your note durations, quarter note gets 1 beat, half note gets 2, dotted half gets 3, whole note gets 4. So here we have 2 half beats. We still have, or 2 half notes rather, we still have 4 beats in the measure, right? So you have 2 beats there, and 2 more beats there, beats 3 and 4. We'll talk more about how to count these in a minute when we talk about time signatures. But right here we have 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm still counting to 4 in this measure, we call it, and we're just playing the notes a little bit longer. So those are called the note durations. They are the duration in which you hit the notes. Now we're going to talk about measures. So if you notice that music is broken up by these vertical lines, right? Right there's one. There's another one. Let's find one more. So there's a third one, right? And those are called the measure lines. But they aren't really the measures themselves. They just kind of tell us where the measures take place. The measures themselves are the distance between, each of these boxes. So measure 1 is right here. Measure 2 is right there. Let me actually scroll that down for us. So you have measure 1 in that box, measure 2 right there. So what are measures for? Well, measures are really so we can break up the music and read it a little bit easier. It just helps really organize the music into little units, right? And they are based on the thing we're going to talk about in a minute here called the time signature, which I'll tell you what that means in a second. But basically, we're fitting so many beats into each of these boxes, and it just really makes it a lot easier to follow the song. So if you're playing in a band and the instructor says, or the director says, play starting from measure 10, you'll know where that is. And usually there's what we call measure numbers at the top of the page, not at the top of the page, but like right above where the measure is, to tell you what number measure you're currently on. So that's all there is for measures. Just know that they are these little boxes that really help break up the music into more digestible and easier to understand smaller units. Now we're going to talk about this thing called the time signature. So where's the time signature usually located? Well, it's usually located right at the beginning of the song. Let's pick a fancy color here. Here's red. And that is not the time signature. Here is the time signature right next to the clef. So and you say it by the first number first on the top, so 4, and then the bottom number 4. So that one is called 4/4 time signature. And what it tells you is the top number tells you how many beats in a measure, and the bottom number tells you which one gets 1 beat. So it ends in a 4, so what note gets 1 beat? What does that tell us? Well, think about it this way, right? So it's 4/4. Pretend for a minute like the top number is just a 1. And that just makes it easier. So just pretend the top number is a 1, and then write the bottom number as it is written there. So you have 1/4, right? Well, what is 1/4 commonly called? Well, a quarter, right? Like if you have quarter of a pie, there is a quarter. So that's telling us that the quarter note is going to get 1 beat. Now what happens if it says 3/4? Let's choose that. So now it's 3/4. Well, what's changed, right? Only the top number. So we're only changing how many beats we can fit in this measure. The bottom number 4 still remains the same. So a quarter note gets 1 beat. So the way I would think about this is that this is telling us that we have 3 quarter notes, or equivalent to, I mean they could be eighth notes or whatever, in each measure. So let me show you how to fill in just this measure as a quick example. So it's telling us, right, we can have equivalent to 3 quarter notes in that measure. That's if it cooperates with us. There we go, 3 quarter notes. We're not going to talk about all the note durations today, but you could also fit, a dotted half note, which in itself would equal 3. Now let me add a quarter note. That is incorrect. Now why is it? Well, it's because in this, it actually kind of made it glow red a little bit, or highlighted it red. And that's because we have too many beats in that measure. So this measure has too many beats in it. Now if we were in 4/4, that would be fine, since 4 beats would allow us to have 4 beats in that measure. Let's talk about one more time signature. So here we have 6/8. What's different about this time signature? Well, the top number is now a 6, right? And the bottom number is now an 8. So what it's telling us, basically, remember that it's telling us that there are equivalent to 6 eighth notes in that measure. Now, what note gets 1 beat now? Well, it's the bottom number 8, right? So remember, to figure this out, you just pretend like the top number is a 1, you write the bottom number as usual, and hey, what fraction is that? That's 1/8, or the eighth note gets 1 beat. So now I'm going to draw out a measure of 6/8. And these all need to be eighth notes. And there we go. There's 6/8. Commonly, they kind of beam them across like that. But we have 6. Let's count them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 eighth notes in that measure. So let's move on to the final topic of today, which is defining exactly what rhythm is, kind of tying everything together here. So how would I define rhythm, right? Well, I would define rhythm as a combination of note durations and beats. It's really a recognizable pattern that you can find in a piece of music, which has to do with how long you're playing the notes, right? So if you're like, there's your rhythm there, bump, 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 bump. You can identify that as it appears in a song, so it's recognizable to you as a pattern. Or, just simply having 4 quarter notes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. That's a rhythm too. It's a very simple rhythm, right? You're just playing the beats. So if you're just playing steady beats, that can be a rhythm. But just because you're playing a rhythm doesn't mean that all those notes are beats in themselves. They're all like grouped together into beats. But just be careful that there's that discrepancy there, that you can have beats, right, and you play them smoothly, and that can be a form of rhythm, but just because it's a rhythm doesn't mean that it's exactly a beat. So to conclude, just going over some of the terms we talked about today. So the beat is the regular interval of sound, right? Like that, or let me play on the piano. Beats are fit into these things we call measures, right? You have a measure here and a measure here. By the way, when you're counting beats in a measure, you're only counting one clef at a time. One of the mistakes a lot of people make is that they'll count both of them, but you're only counting one across because both clefs are actually being played simultaneously at the same time. So you're only going to be counting the beats on one clef. And then obviously the amount of beats up in the top clef should match the beats in the bottom clef. It doesn't have to have the same rhythm, but it does have to, like in 6/8 here, we have to have 6 beats up top and 6 beats below. We're not going to add those up to equal 12. So that's one thing I just wanted to mention. And then we also have our time signature, tells us how many of the beats can fit in each of these measures. So that's how that fits together. And then lastly, we have our rhythm, which a rhythm is just really a combination of note durations, which is another thing we talked about, how long to play the notes, that forms a recognizable pattern to us, and that is our rhythm that we have. So today's lesson was strictly just an introduction into rhythm, defining these terms because I feel like these terms come up a lot and people don't know exactly what they mean because they sound so similar, beats and rhythm and measures and time signatures and things like that. So the whole goal of this lesson was to fit them all together. So it's quiz time. Are you ready? Just a couple of questions here for you today. Question 1 is, how would you define a beat? Question 2 is, what is a time signature and what does it do? What is it used for? And then the third question is, the beats and the rhythms and all this stuff are organized into these little boxes, divided by these vertical lines. What are the boxes called? So how'd you do? If you got them all right, then you understand the lesson perfectly. If you didn't know the answer to some of the questions, then you should go back and watch the lesson again. And I want to tell you that you really should subscribe and become a part of our classroom because there's new piano and music lessons coming every Friday at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, so you don't want to miss out on those great updates. And one last thing is you probably want to watch my playlist, wherever it may be, playlist on rhythm itself where we go through on how to count quarter notes, half notes, and whole notes. And there's also 3 rhythm courses over on my website, lessonsontheweb.com. But if you want something free to check out in the meantime after this lesson, this playlist, wherever it will appear, is a great way to do that. So this has been Tim from Lessons on the Web. Thank you so much for being a part of our classroom, watching this lesson, and have a great day. Thank you.